from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. Ryan Edwards, Benjamin Allbright breaking down the Broncos win over the Detroit Lions 38-10. I know for all the people out there that were looking for the style points of beating a team that's down right now, they're probably pretty thrilled about this win. Although I'd say overall the reaction has been fairly tepid. It was a little bit of like, yeah, well, they beat all the bad teams. And it's like, well, they've also lost to some teams that aren't really good either. I saw our guy Andrew Mason put that out there. It's like they beat some good teams. They've lost some good teams. They beat some bad teams. They've lost to some mediocre teams. I think that's really what it comes down to. But either way, Ben, what's your biggest takeaway from that Broncos win?
They handled business when they need to handle business. It was really easy to overlook the Detroit Lions, who are now 1-11-1 in a mark of perfect symmetry, against a team. The Detroit Lions. They're terrible. It would be easy to look past Detroit and start looking ahead to Cincinnati or even the Raiders or even the Chargers and Chiefs. And you've got to focus. You've got to. Every coach's worst nightmare is guys aren't checked into that game because they're looking ahead to another one. And I think. Vic Fangio, in a way, kind of, with the Demaryius Thomas stuff, it's like, hey, we've got something that we can focus on. Here's my focal point, and that helps you kind of dial it back and look at the Lions. Make sure you get that win and notch that win under your belt before you move on to the next one. Because, every game is tough in the NFL. Even the games that aren't tough are tough. Ask the Bills against the Jags or ask the Bills against their schedule for the last month. But,
right.
It really is. It really can be difficult. And you just slip for a second, and then you are the Bills. And you look up, and you were number one seed in the AFC, and now you're barely on the edge of making the playoffs because you dropped, 4 in a row or whatever. And so it really can be quite a roller coaster in the league, and you got to stay dialed in. I thought that's my takeaway. They stayed dialed in. They did what they were supposed to do. They got the W. On to the next one.
And, of course, the emotion of the game and the emotion of the stadium with several of the players, you knew was going to be a big deal. And we haven't had a chance to talk about this on Broncos TV, the really tragic passing of Demaryius Thomas and how much he meant to this community, how much he meant to a lot of the people around, whether you knew him directly or not. Everybody seemed to have a connection with him. And certainly we on our radio show were talking about it, and we had people texting in, and there was just this amount of anguish that people felt that connected all of us to somebody that seemed to represent the best of what the people that wear this uniform, that represent this community. And so the emotion of that day as well, I think, is part of the story. And I don't know if it'll remain part of the story for the remainder of the year, but I know for at least that game, that's what's going to come to mind.
Yeah, I think so. And you don't want to use up everything you've got in your emotional reserves. You want to honor a guy properly, but at the same time, you don't want to spend everything on that and then just not have anything left the rest of the season. This team is a team that's frankly tied for the playoffs. You got 5 teams tied for the final 2 spots. Denver's one of them. And it was funny, a hot take guy talk about gutting the team or a rebuild or whatever it was they were talking about a few weeks ago. It's such nonsense, I can't even remember. But, the same guy who guaranteed the Broncos weren't going to win 5 games this year, last year. And, he ducked his bet to charity, so I made the $1,000 bet his name. But,
good for you.
It's the same stuff. You've got to find a way to kind of come back, dial yourself into the next week, plug yourself in for that and win. Kareem Jackson talking about every week was a playoff game from here on out. He's not wrong. And you've got to kind of have that mentality because it is. And, if the Broncos are able to make the playoffs this year against all expectation, hey, that's something. So, we'll see. I think it's a good enough football team. They got a good enough defense. I don't know that they're a Super Bowl contender because there's some kinks in the pass game that need to get worked out, that are not worked out. And that's, if you're going to have a bone to pick, you're going to have a gripe, that's the gripe you have with this. I'm never going to pick apart a blowout win, but if you're going to, that's where you're going to pick it apart.
Well, and that's where I kind of came with it on Broncos React, the reaction show following the game on KOA, is I came at it from that. It's like, well, I don't feel like this team is multiple enough. They have discovered an identity, which is something far more than they've had in the last several years. There was nothing you could hang your hat on that they did consistently on the offensive side, with maybe the exception of turnovers. That was like the one thing you could say is they were terrible in time of possession and they were terrible with turning the ball over. And that's about it. But that's not something you, again, hang your hat on. Now they have something. They have the chance to become the 8th team in NFL history to have 2 1,000-yard backs. That's a real shot of something like that happening after this performance. And I don't doubt that they probably can find a way to do that but as long as they don't run into a team that does everything they can to sell out against the run. But that's when the pass game needs to show up. So when I say they're not multiple enough, is I don't really trust Teddy Bridgewater to complete passes consistently right now because he hasn't been as accurate over the last several weeks.
If I say that you need each of the running backs to get 100 yards in a game for each of the next 5 games to win them, how many of those games are you confident they can do that in? Versus if I tell you I need Teddy Bridgewater to get you 300 yards in that game over the next 5 games.
That's a great question. The running game probably, but
the run game you're probably going to say 3, maybe 4 games. I firmly believe they can do that. I'm not sure about a couple of the others. The passing game, is there any in there you're confident that he can do that in? Maybe the Raiders. I don't know.
The Raiders would be the one game that I would say that.
So at the end of the day, that's your confidence level in who's able to carry this football team. And with Teddy Bridgewater, I like Teddy Bridgewater the person. I think he's a nice guy. I respect that he's a warrior gutting it through injury to play out there with these guys, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I am not confident that when needed, he can put a team on his back and carry them because, frankly, I've never seen it in his career. I think he has something like 5 or 4 fourth quarter comebacks in his career. 0-18 when losing at the half in his career. 0-18 when losing at the half. So Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to do something he's never done before and become that guy if the Broncos are going to make a Super Bowl.
Let's go back to a little bit of positive on this game. Some things that they've been doing pretty well, the exception being the Chiefs game, but they did really well in the previous game against the Chargers. They were really good on third down, 8 of 12 in this game. They were 5 for 5 in the red zone. And you know what else that I really loved about this game is both turnovers, the defense gave them extra possessions. They scored touchdowns on both those turnovers, including the final drive, which was 88 yards. Again, a little hat tip there for Demaryius Thomas. 88 yards on that final drive. And, again, off the Justin Simmons interception, you had the fumble recovery earlier. They scored a touchdown off that. I mean, that's the mark of a team that is playing complementary, that is playing well. And so, we can sit here and we'll nitpick, and you're right. When you win by 28 points, it's really tough to come in here and say, they got to do this way better. But at the same time, if you want to be that team that is playing your best football and you're going to be playing against teams other than the Raiders that are all ahead of you in the standings right now, it's going to take very good, if not great performance, especially from usually your quarterback.
And even performance too.
Yes.
It was funny because they came out in the first quarter and after the emotion wore off and then they kind of fell flat in that second quarter and they were able to kind of recapture it at halftime. So, you're going to have to see a team that's even keel in that regards. And, that is the one thing about Teddy Bridgewater. He is even keel.
Yep. We'll have more breakdown on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show. We'll have more on Broncos TV coming up as we turn our focus to the Cincinnati Bengals. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.